We're on. Brandon, how are you?
Hey, Chip, long time no see, man. It's been a long time since we've recorded something, right?
I know I actually can say I even missed it a little. I was like, oh, this is exciting. We're going to get to record something.
I was getting frustrated too because like we couldn't find a time to do it, and I was just like, well, are we going to keep on doing this, or what's the thing I want to? But it was difficult to find, obviously, the time. So good holiday and all that good stuff.
I had a great holiday, which was one of the reasons why you and I never were able to find time. I think next year we'll know from about December 15th to January 15th. It's not going to
Yeah,
happen.
we need
And
to we
I
need to
will,
let people know that we're going to go on hiatus or something like that, or
well,
like the
I'll give
movies,
in
they
to,
go, they go off programming for the season.
yeah, we'll do one of two things. We'll either stack up a couple episodes, which, as Brandon knows, but the rest of you don't, I've been reluctant to do because our stuff is best, I think, when we're sort of ad-libbed and we're doing something timely. But we can find some topics. We can put some stuff in the can to run over the holidays. Maybe at this time next year, Brandon, maybe we'll do a best of. I doubt it. That's a lot of work.
Yeah,
But
that is a lot of work. So
so,
Chip, last
yep,
year we at the very end we talked a little bit about New Year's resolutions,
yep.
and you gave one that I actually wrote down, which was to look at your contracts and to do pricing and all that. And I wrote it down because I wanted to do it, and as it turned out, I hadn't done it in about a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. So I'm admitting that here to everybody. And I had some questions because, quite frankly, I don't know if I had really a good methodology of going about in doing it. I didn't have any frame reference. I know that you've done this quite a bit with a lot of practices, so I thought that today would be a good day to start off the year with you perhaps walking me through kind of how to look at my pricing, how to look at a contract, and just kind of on a high level, what to look for and kind of how to start setting my prices for 2014.
Well, Brandon, I think that's an excellent idea, especially because that's what I'm prepared to do today.
All
Um,
right.
this was Brandon's idea. It was great, and I am going to walk everyone through how to look at your pricing. I'm also glad you brought up the contest that we had at the end of the year involved from regarding New Year's resolutions, and also I asked people to figure out what they were thankful for, and just so nobody misses it, I did put all the resolutions that I received on my blog. So if you go to chipsblog.pcc.com, all the resolutions they are there from different practices, and I have to tell you, they were great. I had a very hard time picking a winner. In fact, I had such a hard time, and because it's the PCC way of doing things, everyone's a winner at PCC sometimes. I called up Paul Vincieri, who is putting on the Pediatric Management Institute talks, who the prize was a free ticket, or two free tickets actually, to go see one of the PMI seminars. And I asked him if he'd be willing to split with me, because I said I would pay for someone's tickets. But I asked him if he'd split for me a couple more tickets so I could distribute additional ones. And he said he was willing. In fact, I saw one of the winners, Lori Thomas from out in California. She was at the PMI seminar just this last weekend in DC, where we had over 35 people. I think it went incredibly well. It was yet again at the end of the seminar. This has happened to me every single time I've done one of these with Paul. Or I should say for Paul. Someone came up to me at the end and said, "This was so much better than I expected. I'm so glad I came. I'm going to be making huge changes in my office on Monday." All right, which to me that's like the best reward.
Yeah, that's what it's all about right there, right?
Yep, that and a $1 million check, which I'll never get. But that since in my while I wait for that, I have to get these sort of spiritual rewards. And that's the one, and which is a great segue, because one of the things I taught in the class is how to set your prices, and I get this question all the time. Now, you and I, all right, we're going to make an assumption that using the RVU system is the best place to start and often the best place to finish. I have a lecture about why, and I'll spare everyone right now. If you really want that lecture, we'll come back to it. I'm just going to say a couple things. The RVUs are in use by every single payer, period. They all use it, and your contracts read this way. So when we talk about what we're going to look at in a moment, not only is it to set your pricing to make sure you're collecting enough money and charging enough on your procedures, but it's also to be used for analyzing your contracts. That's like a huge important part. So Brandon, I know that you have contracts that say we're going to pay you 120% of X and 140% of Y or whatever. Don't we wish it's that high? And how would you know that's what they're doing unless you have some sort of program or way of comparing? Here's the big example. Many of our listeners, our dear friendly listeners, have received Medicaid checks in 2013 for the Medicaid booster, the ACA booster.
Yeah, the parity, Medicare parity. That's what I call it.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And so if Medicaid is suddenly paying you 100% of Medicare, how on earth do you know what that number is unless you go do a little research?
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So we have this RVU. So this might be already in your talk, but so we have the RVU, relative value units. So we're under the assumption that we know most of the people listening to this know what it is, but really quick, essentially it is a number, right? That is, there's a way of figuring it out that that Medicare or CMS or whoever does this thing comes up with it, and then every procedure code gets assigned this number, which is called an RVU, correct?
Correct. And so every CPT code has a score. That score is converted into dollars, and each of those scores is adjustable by
region,
geographic location. So like where you are, Brandon, you're in the Chicago suburbs. You have one score that the rest of Chicago or the rest of Illinois does not, and it's different.
Correct, because I have a suburban one, but there's also Chicago proper, and then mine's a suburban one, and I don't know if there's another one, but
there is for the rest of Illinois.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So if you're in Peoria, that's not a suburb, right?
No.
Okay. I don't know my geography. So in any event, the challenge with
so it's like a point system, and in the point system, it's like it's divided into thirds. 1/3 is malpractice. 1/3 is like the facility, like the cost of overhead is my assumption. And then you have the actual work of the doctor, right? Like what do you think is a relative value unit for this CPT code as far as the work of the doctor is concerned.
Correct. And the real division of the values, it's about, this is approximate, but it's about 40, let's say 45 or 47% the work expense. That's the physician part. How much time does it take?
How difficult, or how much time?
What kind of training that physician needs, and so forth. Then there's the work expense, and that's everything from your supplies to your rent to your
they refer that to like facility expense, right?
Yeah, well, it's not the facility expense. It's known as the work expense, and it's divided into facility and non-facility expenses.
Okay.
So there's some procedures where the overhead of doing that procedure is cheaper at the hospital because they're set up for it. Right. Other procedures, they're much more expensive to do at the hospital because they're set up for it.
So for our purposes, we would be a non-facility because
you are non-facility. Private practice pediatricians are non-facility.
Is a non-facility, right? Because they equate like a hospital as a facility, and we are non-facility, right?
Correct. And then about 5% of, and this is on average because on a procedure-by-procedure basis, that balance is very different. So when you give,
it's not a third across the board. It's adjusted. Okay, so you have this number for each CPT code. So that's the RVU. Now the insurance company says, all right, we're going to assign this much money according to the RVU schedule for I guess they do this by year, right? So they say sometimes they do like, okay, for 2006 or 2007 or whatever they decide, right?
Yep. So they'll tell you, in theory, if they follow their own contract as well, we are going to pay you X% of Medicare. That's a number somewhere between 40 and 140 as a rule. All right. The higher the better. And we're going to pay you X% of Medicare based on the 2008 RVU scale. Now, one thing that I really want to make clear before we jump into this. There's a whole slew of codes that do not have RVU values that are not included in those estimates. And the big ticket items are your immunizations,
Yeah.
Immunizations are not covered by Medicare. They don't have a Medicare price. There's a whole other system for doing that. So keep in mind that about 35%, my gut feeling, but it's about 35-40% of your business is not covered by the RVUs, but a big chunk is, and that's what we're going to look at. All right.
Yeah, so if you look at your, if assuming that you're like a regular, like the traditional practice, you have a boatload of the sick codes. You have a boatload of hopefully of the wellness codes. And then what else? I don't know, top
the other top codes, actually.
Top 10 codes or something like that is what you should focus on. I mean, certainly you don't want to go.
I'm glad you asked, Brandon, because just yesterday or Saturday or whatever day it is today, I don't know. Today's Monday. No, today's Wednesday. So on Monday, I posted on my blog a list of the most common RVU valid. That's my term for them. RVU valid procedures and the difference in from 2013 to 2014 about of their value. And I can tell you, so the most common procedure codes are at the top, your IMS admins, your 90460s, your 90471s.
They didn't add RVU values to that until just recently. So if you're looking at an old RVU schedule, you're not going to have that. But I think in 2010, they added an RVU for IMS, right?
No, actually, they've had RVUs for some time, but in 2009, they jumped up significantly. So that's what it was. They used to be very small. They used to be the equivalent of about $5 to $10, and now they're worth between $30 and $40. All right, I'm going to show you this.
Immunizations didn't have. Okay, but that's all right. Well,
okay. And then you're absolutely right. Your sick visit code, your 99201s through 99215s, your 99381s through 395s, your well visit codes, and then the other popular codes include your hospital admit and your discharge, your 99238. Your vision screen, your 99173.
A lot of the wellness, yeah. So a lot of the wellness things that go under the wellness visits, so the vision screen, hearing screen.
I have. If you go to chipsblog.pcc.com right now, my most recent post has a list of these codes and their RVU values. But what I'm going to walk you through is how to determine them for yourself in your region, and how you can also enter what you're getting paid by a payer to compare that to their own contract. Okay. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Before you get to that, though, I think it's important to highlight, because I've heard this plenty, where when you're looking at the contracts, they'll give you a good price on certain things, but then not the greatest on some other stuff. And it's important to know the frequency of each one of those codes, because it might be that you're getting paid well for a code that you barely bill, and then on the other side you're getting blindsided by a code that you bill frequently. Let's go say like a vision screen, and they knock that one down. So the frequency of how many times you use that code is very important, is it not?
Brandon, it sounds like you've attended one of my courses before. That sounds awesome. I couldn't have said it better myself. You're absolutely correct. When we go through this, when we look at some sample codes, I want everyone to be reminded not to get fooled one way or the other about a particular code. So many people, they say, well, what do they pay for 99213? Oh, they pay well for 99213. Let's jump into that contract. That's a huge mistake. And for the very purpose for the very reason you indicate. And I know plenty of people who see that, oh, they pay me well on my well visits, but if you don't get paid well on your admins or on your vaccines, then you get dinged. So there are two things I'm going to tell you about that. Number one, we'll be able to look in a minute at using the frequency of the procedures that you do. We'll be able to look at what your overall payment rate is across all your procedures. You'll literally be able to say, I get paid on average 110% from Blue Cross Blue Shield or from Aetna or whatnot. Mm-hmm. But then bigger picture, at the end of the day, you really need to look at your average revenue per visit. That's the thing that tells you. The bottom line is, it doesn't matter what a payer says it's going to pay you relative to Medicare. If you're getting $100 per visit from payer A and $150 per visit from payer B is paying you more. That's the bottom line. And so we do need to remember that as we go through this. So that's a very good point to make. All right, so let me show.
What are you going to show us then? What do you have here? You're going to show us something.
In theory, we'll see how this works. And Brandon, you're going to have to tell me if it doesn't work. I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to walk you through what anybody watching our podcast can do to have their own RVU calculator, okay, and pricing calculator. So I'm going to share my screen here in a minute. And I
think it's worth noting, though, because maybe if you haven't gone through this before, the reason you need to find out what the number is because they don't tell you the number. They don't tell you it's going to be this dollar amount, right? They just say, here's the wording says we're going to pay you, we're going to pay you based on the Medicare schedule of 2008 or 2007 or whatever the case might be. And you're like, well, how much is that? And they're like, well, we can't tell you. You have to go out and find out yourself, right?
That's exactly correct.
Very rarely will they tell you, here are my codes, here's the code, here's the price, here's the code, here's the price.
And this is also how you can, when they tell you something like, oh, we're going to pay you, 110% of Medicare, to ask them what year, and you can go use this tool that I'm about to show you and go figure out your fee schedule.
Right. Okay.
All right. So, Brandon, can you see this web page on the screen?
I see your blog.
Yep. Okay, so what I want everyone to do, I want to be clear. I'm going to show you the 2013 RVU calculator. Why not use 2014? Two reasons. Reason number one, because I haven't finished with the 2014 yet. I previewed it this weekend at the PMI course and went really well, but I'm not ready to share it. That's number one. Reason number two, because most payers aren't using 2014 yet. They're still using 2012 and so forth. So, and maybe
some even older ones.
Yeah, someone used 2007, 2008. Anyway, so what you do is
here's another thing. Sometimes if you haven't done this in a long time, you might still be getting paid, 2008 rates, right, or 2007 if you haven't looked at your contracts in a long time, because they're not going to, volunteer the information. And things
absolutely
may have gone up or may have gone down, so,
And as a rule of thumb, pediatric CPT codes have gone up more or less. There's some exceptions, but generally speaking, they've gone up every year over the last 5 years. So if you're using 2008 values, I assure you that you're getting dinged. All right.
See, just by that little nugget right there was enough to listen in for the first 20 minutes.
Okay, great. I'm glad you liked it. So if you come to chipsblog.pcc.com, and after you tear yourself away from my other reports and data and editorials and everything like that, you should read the pediatric RVU comparison. If you just come here to the search box, okay, after you enter your email address in here to subscribe, of course, because Brandon, of course you are. All right, so you type in RVU calculator and you search for it. And the reason you do this is because I've written a bunch of them. All right, so here's one for 2011. Here's one for 2009. Here's one for 2008. We're going to grab 2013, okay?
All right, go. I want to see it. You're talking, I don't care about 2012 and all the other ones.
Right, you have to grab this one. Here are the instructions, and this is because when Brandon and I are off the phone or whatever we're doing right now, the instructions are right here. And this is all you do. Okay, you ready? You download the spreadsheet. There's a version here and a version here. And I'm walking people through this because I get these questions all the time. So I just downloaded the spreadsheet, and I'm going to open it up. And Brandon, you tell me if...
So for those that are listening, Chip has two links. One in Open Office, which is an open standard Excel, blah, 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 blah for everybody. And then he's got a Microsoft version, which is Excel version, MS. So he's got both of those links there, and then he clicked on them. Below that, it says basically the steps. How does this work? But we need to download this little file that Chip has there on his blog. All right.
Yep. And when you open it, this is what it looks like. All right. You know you've gotten the right start when you have a screen that looks like this, and it's a spreadsheet with 3 tabs. Brandon, does it look all right on your screen?
Looks perfectly. So for those that are listening, it's a spreadsheet that Chip created. That basically you just have some things that you need to input, which he's going to walk us through. That's going to calculate a lot of the things already for us. But yeah, that's basically what we're looking at.
Yep. And so This spreadsheet has 3 tabs. It has the calculator here on the front page, which I'm going to come back to, and we're going to take a look at. It has the second tab, which is blank and empty, which I'll explain in a moment. And then the third tab right down here, which has all these crazy geographic adjustment values in here, which I hand-typed. I'm just kidding. But I did put them in there and make it this editable so it's readable. You don't have to do anything there. This tab right here is blank, and because this is where we need to put the RVU values into the spreadsheet. Now, you're not going to hand-type them because they're 25,000 lines. I cannot distribute an RVU calculator with these CPT codes and RVU values in them because the AMA will sue my butt off. All right?
Yeah, that's a topic for another podcast. So you have to go find the file, copy and paste it, and then put it into one of your tabs, right?
All right. And here's how you do that, just so you know. All right. If you go back to the blog, there is a link right here in the blog that you can go to. Okay. And that will bring you right straight to CMS. And here's the zip file that you want to link. I name it. It's all right there. Okay. And you download the file. So here it goes. It's downloading right here. And when it's done downloading, takes a minute, depends on your bandwidth. If you open that file up, in the middle of that file, you will see.
So the file is a zip file. So it's not. It's a compressed file, right? So there's multiple files inside that zip file.
Yep, that's exactly right. And if you
when you open it, which one do we get? Which one do we pull?
And if you the way you can tell is if you look at the in the files, or if you look at the spreadsheet, the tab itself on the spreadsheet is named after, it has the name of the file name itself. And so if you look right here, it says PPRVU13 blah 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 blah. I'm just going to grab the zip file. Watch this. I'm going to grab the zip file out of that, or grab this spreadsheet out of that zip file. It takes a minute to load because it's really big.
It's a large file, yeah.
Yeah, it's got a zillion lines in it. I select the entire thing. I hit copy, and then I come right over here into my file, which you should see on your screen, and then I hit paste. All right, and when I paste it in, this is what it looks like.
So it brought over a whole bunch of, it brought over everything. I think this is important because not everybody's comfortable with Excel, but Chip put the cursor on cell A1 and then just pasted the whole thing, so everything falls in. Because this is important because Chip's Excel sheet, the other tab, has links to look at specific columns and specific cells and so forth. That's what makes the magic work once the file is filled with all the different variables, right?
Brandon, you've got it exactly. And you'll know you've done it right when A, your spreadsheet slows down a lot, and B, if you look, it's got 15,000 lines of data from CMS in this second tab. Once you've done that, you've done all the hard work. Because watch this. If we come back to the front page now, all right, in theory, hopefully I didn't crash. Yeah, there we go. And like I said, it slows down. If I come back to the front page, here's what we get. You can click on the practice location. So, Brandon, let's do, let's do
Illinois suburbs. Let's do Illinois suburbs.
Suburban Chicago. There you are. So as soon as I click on suburban Chicago, just so you know, you'll see here that we now know that your work piece is increased by 2.5%. Your practice expense goes up by 7.2%, and your malpractice, you must have a bad malpractice situation where you are, goes up by 70%. All right. Fortunately, that's a very small part. And let's say that we want to set our Medicaid pricing. Now, I want to be clear, FTC people listening, I'm using this as an example. If I want to set my pricing to 175% of Medicare. Now, everyone should know that most other specialties use between, 200 and 400%, but we're pediatricians, and we're very generous and very kind, and this is what we do, all right? Now watch this. I enter in 175%, and by the way, the only fields where you're filling information is where you have these little blue sections right here. Everything else is done for
shaded. So the fields that you need to put in are shaded.
are shaded.
Shaded light blue, right?
A very, very light blue.
So you select whatever you want as your Medicare multiplier,
Yep.
and then so we have a Medicare factor. That's something that comes down the pike also, right? That's a number that gets adjusted from time to time, but we don't have any say over that number, right?
You don't have any say over that number. Now, just so you know, this number gets filled in automatically. You can see this crazy cell up here. This number does get filled in automatically when you paste the RVU data in. It grabs that year's conversion factor. However,
because that conversion factor, I mean that Medicare factor also gets adjusted by region, correct?
no, this one is flat for the flat nationally. It's effectively adjusted by region by this up here.
Oh, okay, got it.
However, I don't hardwire it because sometimes, and this is what's happened with the Medicare, with the Medicare parity stuff, the Medicaid parity stuff, that you might use one set of RVU values, like for 2013, but use a Medicare multiplier from another year. So I can just type in this box, 38, and it would use $38.
That you're typing in. See, that's an important. I didn't know that. So the Medicare factor, if you're using another year, you need to find that year's Medicare factor.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. No, 99% of the time you don't have to do anything. All right. But if you ever want to change that number, you can just type that number in a box. So then we come right here.
Is Medicare factor, or like every 2-3 years, if my memory serves me right?
Every year the Medicare factor changes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is why, Brandon, we need to do this with you every year. You are a good example of why we need to do this.
Now that this actually, I actually did this, by the way. I thought I had not, but once you brought up the file, I'm like, I already did this deal. But the thing is
Brandon,
that I haven't done it every year though, so this is a good refresher.
I'm just going to say that
if you have a practice FACF, what's that?
I'm going to explain it once I get some data in here.
Okay.
All right. So yes, thank you for bringing it up, but I will. I'll explain it once I get some data in there. Now I am going to say, Brandon, if you remember this spreadsheet, that means you haven't done it since you've become a PCC client, because
that's correct.
PCC clients just hit a button. All right. So that means it's been too long. So here we go. So I'm going to enter in a CPT code. What is your favorite CPT code?
99213.
All right, 99213. So all I do is type in a CPT code and hit enter, and the spreadsheet does all the work. You can ignore what the status code means.
Basically, what's happening behind the scenes is it's going out to all the things that we pasted prior, finding the values, and then putting them in the proper space. That's why it's very important to paste that big file into the A1 column, or A1 cell rather, because otherwise it's not going to find nothing.
That's exactly right. So it basically comes over to this file over here, scrolls down for you, looks up 99213, and then goes across and looks up each one of
these
crazy values, okay, and then comes back here and says, okay, I've looked up where Brandon lives, I've looked up the description and everything like that, and I can tell you that in 2013 in suburban Chicago, a 99213 is worth 2.29 RVUs. I know that Medicare will pay me $78.01 for that, so that's 2.29 times 34.02. And if I want to charge 175% of Medicare, I would charge 136.52.
Okay.
Now, this is where things get exciting. So let me do this. I'm going to put in some additional codes. 99214, 99391, 90460, 90461, okay? And you can just literally paste into that column your
top 20, top 30 codes.
Yeah, I recommend, frankly, that people put in every single CPT code that they bill. Now,
every single one, okay.
Yeah, because if you do your top 30, you are only explaining you're explaining about 65% of your RVU valid revenue. All right, that's it. Maybe maybe more, but it's you really need to get to 80 or 90. All right, especially because, all right, when you enter your popular ones in, those are all procedures that 99213 and so on and so forth. The places where most practices goof up their pricing and reimbursement most is on those rare procedures that they do from time to time.
But pay really well.
Exactly. Now, if you enter in a code like a 90707, all right, and you notice when I enter, that's an MMR, you'll notice that it goes all zeros here. That's because that's an example of something that isn't it isn't paid.
They don't have a value for it.
Yep.
That needs to be done separately, more from a business standpoint. Just look at your cost of what the MMR vaccine is, and then see what everybody else pays, and see that's just a straightforward, profit and and margin. I mean, that's just like what it costs, what you sell it at, which is essentially what they pay you at. You don't really sell it at that, but if you're talking from a business term, and then hopefully it's a positive number once you do the math.
Right. And in fact, hopefully it's at least 20% more than what you paid. We'll do that. Maybe we'll do that class sometime. So now this is where things can get interesting. So if you simply want to know what your prices are, okay, and whether they're appropriate, you can actually go in and calculate for each one of your procedures what your prices should be. And just as an aside, regardless of what you set your pricing at relative to Medicare, obviously you're not going to set your 99214 at $199.99. You're going to set it at $200. You're not going to set your 99213 at $136. You might put that at $140. Okay, I don't like to round down in this game. So that's it. Now let me show you something.
Your units, is that the frequency then?
Well, now we get interesting. And now this is where you can determine your overall pricing or compare your pricing for a payer. So you can come over here and put in the number of units you did total, if you want to look at your whole practice, or maybe the number of units you did for a particular payer. And watch what happens, okay? So I'm going to say I did 1,000 of these, and I did 1,000 of these, and I did 1,000 of these. I'm making this up, and I did 2,000 of these, and I did 1,500 of these. All right, nothing happens yet. But as soon as I put in a price, so let's say that this practice paid or charges $120 for this one, $205 for that one.
You put your current prices. You put your current prices.
Your current prices. Now, if you're looking retroactively, maybe you would put your prices for what they were last year, okay? But I'm just going to tell you that you have to pay some attention to that. But these are some whoopsie. Let's make this 15. Two things happen, okay? As soon as I do this,
Scroll over just a little bit, Chip, because I can barely see the column L.
Well, okay, I don't want to move over yet. Here's why. As soon as you enter in units and price, your FACF gets filled in.
Okay.
And what this number does is it tells you what you are charging on average across all of your procedures based on your frequency. So what we know right now, I just entered in some guesses.
Yeah.
This practice would be charging 149% of Medicare on average.
On average, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now, if
we're looking to charge 175 in our numbers based on this very, very, very loose scenario here. This practice is only charging on average 150% of Medicare.
Right.
So we have some ground to cover if we want to be up to 175 standards.
Exactly. Brandon, you're a good student today. All right. Now, let's enter in prices as paid by. So when you're creating this spreadsheet, you can literally type in Blue Cross Blue Shield. You can enter in whatever you want here, okay, and do a save as, blah blah blah, and
then this is just the Blue Cross one.
Blue Cross Blue Shield analysis. All right. Analysis. I almost spelled it wrong. All right. So and then you're done. Okay. And so, I'm sorry. Then you're done. I want to enter in some payments here. So let's say Blue Cross Blue Shield says it takes a while to save, everybody. All right. Let's say this Blue Cross Blue Shield pays you $75 here and 110 there and 100 there and 15 here and 10 there. I can see right now these numbers are hardly out of whack. Blue Cross Blue Shield is paying just below, all right, 100% of Medicare on 3 of your E&Ms, and then they're paying 50% of Medicare on your immunization admin. That's not uncommon at all.
Yeah.
All right, so what you can do, all right, is go through and enter in all of your CPT codes, your units, and your payments, and your pricing, and you can see how much you're charging and how much you're being paid, and this will allow you to determine whether your payer is paying their contracts properly, which payers pay you well. Now, this won't tell you whether or not this is a good payer to sign a contract with. You have to look at all those other procedures that are not covered by Medicare, and particularly your IMSS. It's such a huge piece. I mean, if you've got a vendor paying you...
Mostly your vaccines, right? All your actual vaccines.
Mostly your vaccines. But there's some other ones like your after-hours codes and a few other things that that have an impact. But your vaccines and your labs are 95% of that. So yes, this is a big spreadsheet. Yes, you have to go to another website, download a file, copy and paste it in. But once it's in here, I mean, in all sincerity, to do this kind of work, if you want to go buy software to do this, you have to spend somewhere between $500 and $5,000. There are companies, some consultants who will charge you thousands of dollars to do this work. And I'll tell you, they don't even do it as well. All right? So here you have a free RVU calculator. I'm going to post the 2014 one any day now, over the next couple days, and you can actually go through and set your pricing for 2014 now.
So you put the example of Blue Cross Blue Shield, but let's go say that I want, before I get to that point of just getting, I want to get comfortable with the sheet and everything, and I don't want to go through the whole process of putting Aetna and Humana and every single one of this. Yep. So I just want to keep it, just for me to have a standard for moving forward for 2014. So I need to find out what my average, all across the board is for my 99213. So what are all my payers on average pay me, so I can plug them in to my price on the sheet, right?
Yep, that's if you want to start with the global view, that's exactly what you would do. And you would say,
or maybe or at least your highest payer, because maybe that's a good start right there. Whoever's your best payer or your largest one.
Oh, I see. Here's what I'm going to tell you, Brandon. You ready? I see where you're going. I'm going to tell you, start with your highest payer, what you assume is your highest payer.
But not.
I'm going to go on record.
I need to know this distinction. Is it my highest payer based on frequency, or highest payers based on reimbursement?
Highest payment based on payment. And if you are not writing off at least 20% on every procedure, you are undercharging. So right now, too many practices still change their pricing when they get an EOB back, that matches their fee schedule. And that worked for a long time. I used to tell people that all the time, but now I tell people, go look at your contracts. A lot of contracts will say, we will pay you our fee schedule or 80% of your charges, whichever is lower. They never pay you more than you charge.
Yeah.
So I tell people, unless you're writing off at least 20%, you're losing money. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So let's. I'll go back to so everyone here can see my beautiful face again. I'm kidding about my beautiful face. Here we go. Here, I should be back. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. I can see you. I can see you.
All right, awesome.
Well, that wasn't as painful as I thought it was going to be.
It's easy.
I've already done that, and it was a little bit painful because it was more Excel troubles. I couldn't get the Excel to actually do the links and the stuff.
Sometimes
that took me a little while, but I did get to it. But certainly before I became a PCC customer, and my guess is that at least 3 or 4 years that I have not done that.
Yeah, so time to do it. And I will tell you from an Excel standpoint, the number one problem that I run into is people run a report on their system and they have their own spreadsheet and they cut and paste a list of CPT codes into that column, which is exactly what I would want you to do. And there's a problem with spreadsheets in general whereby if it thinks a column, even if the column is made up of all numbers, which with CPT codes is not always the case, it doesn't distinguish properly between text and numbers, and sometimes you will paste numbers in and nothing will happen. If that happens, reset the Excel spreadsheet and do try typing some in by hand, and it should work. If you
I've had that problem before, and I think there's a way also where you can just, sometimes it works where you select all of it and you can tell it these are numbers, and then sometimes that works too.
That's absolutely correct, and I'm just not going to describe how to do that because everyone's situation.
Sometimes it can drive somebody crazy though.
Oh, it's
figure it out. You can't know what it is, what's going on, and.
But that is it. That is it. You Google, spreadsheet format, spreadsheet number format, change to text or vice versa, and you'll find some tools to do it. But I'll just tell you, if you put data in that first column and nothing shows up over at the right, or it doesn't look like it's working, that has, in every single circumstance, that's been the case. The other thing that people sometimes do is sometimes they type a number in there and they put a space and they don't see it, and it won't match. You have to type very exactly.
There'll be space and then number, or even at the end, if it's a 99213 space and you can't see it, then that sometimes will goof it. You gotta go ahead and back it up and make sure that there's no spaces.
That's exactly right. So Brandon, I have one more thing to talk about today, very briefly.
Okay, so here's the thing. I'm in a borrowed office. I'm on my MacBook and I've got about 7% left. I didn't bring my charger just yet. So I got 7% left on my battery. So I can either run really quick to my office and run the risk of this thing.
No, we'll make it.
Or you can talk really, really fast, and then we'll write it out.
I'm going to talk really, really fast. You ready?
Yeah.
So Brandon and I can notice right now, but we have a viewer right now on our watching us live. Now, we never schedule these more than 24 hours in advance, and often we schedule them in 24 minutes. All right. Literally, Brandon will text me and say, "Are you free from 11 to 1?" And I'm like, yes. And so we scramble, make it happen. We are going to, as an experiment, open up our viewing of this live to anyone who's interested in. Yeah, all right. Now, there's no obligation whatsoever. All you have to do is tell us you're interested, and we will invite you when we know. And just for the record, this does mean very often that we will tell you that it's going to start at 11:30, and it doesn't get started till 12 because we always have technical difficulties. So if you're willing to get an invite and that you can feel free to ignore or hop in on, we would love to do that, because my hope here is that in the not distant future, we're going to have some of our viewers become guests, all right? And I didn't actually announce at the beginning of our podcast today who the winner was. And the winner of the competition that we announced in December for Best New Year's Resolution is going to be on this show, Brandon, because her set of resolutions were so crazy in a good way that we have to have her on. That's Robin Warner. I happen to know she's listening now. All right. So Robin Warner is going to.
We'll have her on.
Yeah, we're gonna, and we might even be our next episode. We're gonna have her on so she can talk about how she's gamifying her practice. Now, I've helped her like this much. She's done 99.9% of the work.
Cool. So I'd love to hear that. That's a topic that you and I have discussed offline, and we're both fascinated by it.
Yeah,
so
I want her
looking at that. Chip, I don't mean to be rude, but I got 3% left.
We'll make it. What's the worst that happens? I keep talking.
We went from like 7 to 3, so I don't think we got.
That shows you the power of my words.
We need to sign off. We need to sign off.
We wave goodbye, everybody, to everyone.
Yes. Bye.
Thank you, and we will be back soon.
Bye, everybody.
All right, thanks.